It's me. I've been sitting on my couch and watching rom-coms every week, 'cause this podcast is everything. They say the movies are supposed to heal you, but I ain't done much healing. Hello from the other side. I've watched this film 1,000 times. I'll tell you I'm listening to Romancing the Pod. So I'll stop my singing. So Paige, Mikey, and Todd, you can start. Hello.
Thank you for tuning into Romancing the Pod. You had us at hello. I'm Paige Wesley.
I'm Mikey Randolph.
And I'm Todd Schlosser, and this week we watched
Holidate.
Yes. So, Mikey, would you walk us through why we watched this movie? The story behind how this movie got picked.
This is a charming little story about how when we were recording last week, I checked my email while we were recording.
Like you do, because ADD is a thing.
And Netflix sent me a thing that said, this is a movie you may like based on your viewing experience. And it said Holidate, a movie about two people who agree to each other's dates to the holidays and then end up catching feelings. And I was here for it.
Yeah.
Also, it turned out to be amazing.
Yeah.
It did.
We sort of buried the lead because this movie was really great.
It's #1 on the Netflix charts currently.
Yeah.
I hope it is by the time the episode comes out.
Oh, it might be. I mean, we'll see. It is fantastic.
I dare say it's better than a Hallmark romantic
Yeah.
Christmas movie because it's got some cussing and some like racy jokes, but it has the feeling of a Hallmark movie.
It is legitimately a comedy.
Yes.
It is funny. It's very funny. We looked at reviews, and it has some of the worst reviews for a movie that we've seen on this show. And I do not understand because it's so good.
I actually have some that I want to read later on because we don't have much box office because it's a Netflix
Yeah,
release.
yeah.
So I looked at some of the reviews. So, spoiler alert, I have some of those.
Oh, God. Okay. I feel like I was like, do these people just hate Christmas?
I think these
Yes.
people hate Christmas, comedy, and joy in general.
Paige, it's your coastal elite people, your war on Christmas.
Hey, you know what? Here's the thing. I feel like I liked this movie for the same reason I like Just Friends, because this movie does what a lot of romantic comedies try and fail to do, which is it gives an accurate portrayal of what it is like to be single at the holidays.
It's terrible.
And she in the movie dislikes rom-coms. I identified with her so much.
Oh, this is so good. I picked one that Paige loved.
I loved it. And it was one of those things where I was like, you guys both loved it. I was like, oh God, here I come to bring the hammer of sadness down on this movie. And I turned it on and don't get me wrong, I've got notes. There are a few things that I'm like, what the fuck with this movie? But overall, I really enjoyed it. Like, I will probably watch this again next year.
Same.
Like, I liked it so much.
Natalie told me she's going to make me watch it with her, and I was like, yes, let's do that. We could do it now.
I would watch it again.
Yeah.
I would totally watch it again. I really liked it.
My mom was like, I want to watch it next week. And I was like, I'll come over for it.
Yeah, it was so cute.
It's interesting that you'd watch this movie with your mom. I don't think I would do that.
Well, it's kind of like the father-daughter dance that happens in this movie.
Yeah, as I watched it, I was like, oh, she's not going to like that joke.
No, she's not.
It's so good. It had a lot of heart, too.
It
was
did.
good.
Oh, so much.
I think we just need to get in the fucking movie because it's so good.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of things to talk about.
So we open on Emma Roberts smoking outside of an extremely decorated house.
Yes, like aggressively decorated.
Aggressive.
This must be what my younger brother felt like for years. Because at my mom's house, I would decorate her house like this every year.
This is my comfortable level of Christmas decoration. If I had my druthers, this is what my house would look like. And even once she gets inside the house, because she's hearing jingle bells playing from inside,
Yeah.
she finishes smoking. She puts the cigarette out on a blown plastic Santa, which, by the way, those are vintage and hard to find. So don't put cigarettes out on that.
Yeah, Emma.
Yeah, Emma. And then she just says, fucking holidays and
Yeah.
goes inside, and she walks into a house that is as decorated outside as it is inside, and I literally just typed into my notes, this is my comfortable level of Christmas.
Yes.
Paige, we have 3 Christmas trees. We live in a 1-bedroom apartment.
Fun fact, I just ordered a second Christmas tree for our 1-bedroom apartment.
I love it. Yeah. Are yours flocked, Paige?
Oh.
No. So
Oh,
we usually
please.
get one real one because we save a slice of it. And
Oh, you eat it a year later.
Yeah, you eat it a year later for the anniversary
Yeah.
of that Christmas. Yeah.
exactly. And then, so we have a set of those that are like ornaments, basically,
Aw.
that we have like kept for whatever. So we have a real one. And then I really, really wanted like a mid-century aluminum one.
Now, Emma does run into, when she goes inside, a very overly mean mother.
Her mother is terrible. Her mother is my least favorite character in this film.
She never gets any redemption.
I don't know. At the end, she hooks up with the dad from Wonder Years, right?
Yes.
No, but I mean, she never like reconnects with Emma.
Oh, no. She's fully awful to her daughter the entire movie. Yes.
But something I didn't notice here and didn't realize really or even think about until later in the movie, we don't know what happened to Emma's dad.
I think we kind of know.
Maybe, and I'm like, I would probably assume he's dead.
Oh, I thought just could not deal with the mom stuff anymore and bailed.
That could be, but I thought if that was the case, we'd hear about him more.
Yeah, maybe.
But we don't know. It could be either one. She's at an age where either is plausible.
Sure.
Once I kind of realized, like, oh, we don't know anything about the dad. We haven't heard anything about it. I was like, maybe mom has been alone for a while, and this is her trying, like, living vicariously a little bit.
Yeah, I could see that. She still is terrible.
She's still terrible. It softened me toward her a little bit late in the movie, but she is high-key terrible.
She's always talking about how Emma dresses, like giving her shit for how she dresses. Or Sloane's. Her character's name is Sloane.
So many people in this movie talk about Emma Roberts' body and how she is, quote, let herself go, and it drove me nuts. That's one of the few things where I was like, this does bother me in this movie.
Yeah.
But what I like
it
about
bothered
it...
me, Paige, because I was like,
Yes!
Emma Roberts is gorgeous when she rolls out of bed, getting out eye boogers from her eyes, and she's like, looks hot, you know?
Yes. The one thing that saves this for me, because I would love to see this played with someone less conventionally attractive,
Yes.
less of what we would expect. Like, they do, quote unquote, dress her down. And I think the only reason she pulls it off is she kind of wears her attitude in this movie. And I think that's the only way it works.
I think both leads have that problem of like, they're like movie levels attractive.
Yeah.
Because like he's an Australian, like basically underwear model pro athlete.
Yeah. Anyway, so she comes into the house. Her mom is complaining about the way she's dressed because she's just in like comfy clothes. Like she's in like t-shirts and jeans.
Yeah, she's wearing like a hoodie.
She's wearing like a hoodie.
That's not a slob. I wear hoodies all the time. It's the perfect layering technique.
You see, Todd, when you have a button-down shirt over the hoodie, you're not going to get critiqued as much.
What? A button down over the hoodie?
Yeah.
Why would I put a button down shirt over a hoodie?
I have seen you wear shirts
You
over a
tell
hoodie. Yeah.
me.
I've never worn a button down shirt over a hoodie. Do you know what a hoodie is, Mikey?
Yeah, that's what you wear under your shirts.
You wear them under jackets, yeah.
Anyway, this is the first place we meet her Aunt Susan, who has brought home a mall Santa.
Kristen Chenoweth, who is
Yes.
amazing in this
Yes.
movie and everything she's ever been in.
So good in this movie. She is hilarious in this movie.
I like to think of her as the woman who built the Hallmark Channel, but I love Kristen Chenoweth.
Oh man. For later in the movie, I was rooting for her character so hard.
Yeah.
It's insane. She steals this movie. I love her so much in this movie.
And I honestly like Aunt Susan as a character because she is mirroring the same journey that Sloane is going on, and just from like an older, like 20 years older, 30 years older perspective. And I honestly want a Holidate too, where we just get Kristen Chenoweth's side of this movie.
Yeah, where she and Farouk live happily ever after. Yes, I
Yes.
want that for them.
Yeah, well, I mean, that like starts like when they first meet, you know, that starts at Easter and then goes
Oh.
on and then, you know, till they get together in that scene at the hospital. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. So we also find out in this scene that Sloane has many nephews, nieces and nephews, like
Yeah.
4 of them, I think. And one of them pooped in the manger, but did move Jesus first.
That's when I knew I was in store for a fun time. When the writing of this movie is able to go there this early, I was like, all right, you're going to take a number 2 on the number 1. I am game for where this is going.
And because we did get a cutaway at the mall Santa, which I would say is like a bad Santa level mall Santa.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
It's so funny.
It's so good.
So wild where he's got like a t-shirt under the Santa suit where it's great. So great. Her mom is pestering her because they've been trying to set her up with someone named Rodney, who I guess is a professional clown.
Oh, I didn't realize he was a professional clown.
He's a professional clown.
Does that exist?
Yeah, she was like, I don't want to call him. He's a professional clown.
And they kind of were like, well, no one would want to date you dressed the way you are, looking the way you are. And she's like, I work remote. I'm home all day. And I was like, hard same, girl.
And honestly, she looks amazing. I mean, she's rocking t-shirt, jeans, and a hoodie. She looks great.
I bet that story beat hits a lot harder than they were thinking it was going to.
But so we find out she works remote, and her mom is like, are you still smoking? And she's like, no. And then she just says, no man wants to marry a smoker who lies. Like,
Well, she didn't say. She said her Uber driver was smoking.
Right.
But the mom saw through that. I mean,
Right, she's a mom. I get it.
yeah.
Absolutely.
But her mom is so mean.
Her mom seems to see that her only worth is having someone.
Right.
Like, she's not worth loving completely as she is right now.
Yeah.
It is only when she finds someone. And I do think there's a very revealing conversation later, which is when I kind of started to soften to the mom a little bit, because I think the movie doesn't explicitly tell us something, but might be telling us something in that scene. So I'll kind of bring it up when we get to it. But for the first half of this movie, you really get the sense that her mom is just not on board for her as is, not on board for her being single. And I think there is an argument that this movie makes that it's fine to be single and happy, but she's not happy and is not admitting that she's not happy.
Right.
Which I think is a different conversation.
I think they make it pretty clear that she is unhappy because she was in a relationship with someone we find out named Luke who cheated on her.
Right.
So we find out why she is unhappy slowly, but that happens after we meet Jackson almost immediately right here.
I do like that the mom actively hates the main dude for the whole movie.
The whole movie, she doesn't like him, and until they pull one of the funniest pranks in this movie. And again, I will get to it when we get to it.
Okay, sorry. We're just gushing all over this like critically acclaimed classic Holidate.
Damn.
Critically acclaimed, it is not, but it should be.
We are critics, and we are acclaiming it.
So she ends up talking to her Aunt Susan, the one who brought the mall Santa, and she's basically like, oh, did you meet my date? I met him at the mall. And she's like, okay. And then her Aunt Susan clarifies, he's just my holiday. It's a date only for the holiday, no commitment. And then she says, do you want me to see if he has a friend? Which this both introduces the concept of a holiday to us, but also gives us a peek into A, the family dynamic, and B, who Aunt Susan is. Because essentially Sloane is getting it on all sides. Like, no one is comfortable with Sloane being single.
Right.
And I think it all comes down to they all love her and care for her and want her to be happy and are seeing that she's unhappy. But that is not how it's coming off.
Well, and that's something that families very easily do.
Yes. And like, if you've ever had to be single at a bunch of holiday functions, which I was single for a very long time before I met my husband, it's brutal. And people do this to you all the time. They'll do things like, oh, when are you going to bring somebody home? And you're like, don't you think I want to?
Yeah, like, what do you think I'm trying to do? Yeah.
Like, just settle and just go for it. And I'm like, okay.
Last Christmas, somebody tried to set my sister up with someone that she is related to by marriage. And we were like, what? Like, this is not the 1800s. What is happening?
That's safe. It's by marriage. That's not like her real cousin.
I'm going to consider it real enough.
I once dated someone whose last name was Vance, and I found out a little into the relationship. We didn't date super long, but I found out a little bit into the relationship that my grandmother's maiden name was Vance. It ruined it for me.
I mean, I get that.
I didn't dig any further into seeing if we were related, but that's more or less what it ended for me.
The heart wants what the heart wants, baby.
No. All this to say, families can be pushy because they want you to be happy and they don't realize that pushiness is making you more unhappy.
Yeah, it comes from like a good place, but it comes off
Yeah.
as terribleness.
And this movie, I think, does that really well.
Yes.
Where there were so many scenes of people talking to her at these events in this movie where I was like, I have had this exact conversation. Like, this is too real. So we cut to a different house where a guy and a girl show up, and we find out on the front steps of that house, it's their third date.
Yeah.
I thought this series of scenes, this had me cackling. I was laughing so hard about this.
Mikey, fully same. I love this so much because I have been in things sort of like this.
Yes. I guess I was like, oh my God, I've been here.
All I'm going to say is this is what happens when you try to push people to bring people home for the holidays.
So you're blaming her parents, not her, for putting Jackson in this situation.
I'm blaming an environment of emphasis on being coupled over appreciating who people are on their own.
Sure.
Oh
Yeah,
my
I
gosh,
absolutely fully agree with that. Yeah.
This has happened to me more with like weddings. I had a close friend and her sister and brother-in-law were, and she was engaged to someone else, but we were close friends. But we would hang out still with her family because we were friends. And then her family was like, so like you have more of a connection with Michael than you do your fiance, and like that could be a red flag.
I feel like we're going to get to another couple in this movie in just a bit. And I feel like there are so many red flags. And when we talk about whether or not people are together, we need to include them in that. So they show up at the house. It is similarly decked out for Christmas. Her parents answer the door in Christmas sweaters.
Ugly Christmas sweaters.
Yes.
I mean, is there any other kind? I love ugly Christmas sweaters.
I do love ugly Christmas sweaters.
They say too, we find out this is Jackson eventually, you're even more handsome than in the pictures. And then
Like, what pictures?
yes, we cut to he's in the house buried in photo albums, and her mom is like, this is her first period.
Oh,
Then
my
she's
God.
she's like taking him through her bedroom with all of her like tiaras from, I'm assuming, beauty pageants.
I thought it was insane that Jackson's date's mom in, I guess, Jackson's date's childhood room was like,
Yes.
my husband and I are fully okay if you bone zone our daughter tonight.
Oh, they just said share a bed.
No, they are
did not.
encouraging
They
it.
did not.
They are fully encouraging it.
They really want a baby by October.
Oh, and they put sweaters on them too as well. So they're
They put
all in
sweaters on
matching
them as
sweaters.
well.
If I brought a girl home for Christmas, she would be like, "Go make a baby upstairs."
Your mom would be like that?
I'm like 100% sure.
Well, I also think that's because bringing somebody home for Christmas, that's a big
It
step.
is a big
Yes!
step. Yeah.
So the fact that she brought him home only 3 dates in is wild to begin with, because I feel like it's kind of like, bringing somebody to meet your parents in general. Generally, that's something that you do not do until somebody is important, I would say. Where it's,
Right.
You're past the first couple dates. Weirdly, my husband met my family on my first date. It just worked out that way. But like, that's normally not the way you do things. And I don't know. And I feel like she sets an expectation for them and sets a different expectation for him. And that is the problem in this scene.
I think there are a lot of problems in this scene.
Oh, so many.
Hilarious problem.
That is one of them, yes.
This movie is hilarious.
But it quickly cuts back to Sloane, who is fully sitting at the kids' table, which she refers to as the singles table, and I
The
thought that was
singles table?
hilarious.
But I like how that one little girl was like, I'm not single.
Yes. There's a debate in this scene that comes up later where the reason she's sitting at the singles table is because they don't want to put the leaf into the table.
Yeah,
Which, if you have a table with leaves, pain in the ass.
they are.
I totally understand.
Yeah.
But they don't want to like unset the table to open it up to then reset it so that she can sit down. But then she has a conversation with her niece where her niece is basically like, why didn't you call Rodney? And then flaunts and she's like, I have a boyfriend and we share juice boxes. And Sloane basically just leans over and says, one day you're going to walk outside and he'll be sharing his juice box with a barista named Rainbow. Like, and that's how you know this is real. This is
Yes.
what her life is and was, and you already feel bad for her, but also that little girl is getting an education today.
She is. But that little girl comes back at the very end to give her some good information.
Yes.
I loved that little girl's journey. I thought that was awesome.
I know, it was great. We cut back to the other house where they're in the girl's bedroom. They are about to go Bone Zone.
Yeah,
Like they've
man.
stolen some minutes away during Christmas. He's kind of like, hey, we don't.
Well, yeah, he goes into the room because she's super excited. Her parents love him.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he's like, this is kind of feeling weird. I feel like we're moving a little too fast. And then she's like, get naked.
She like takes her top off and then claps. And then
Yes,
all
she's
the
got
lights
a
go
clapper.
down, and then there's like these lights.
Well, it's like she's got like fuck lights in her childhood bedroom, and they are hooked up to a clapper.
It's so funny.
It is
so funny.
wild. It's so funny.
As Jackson is like protesting, like that, hey, we probably shouldn't do this. Your parents are like right downstairs or whatever. She starts to go down on him, and his like face, like the reluctant blowjob face to me was hilarious. I don't know what else to call it, Paige. Stop laughing at me.
No,
like,
no,
was
that's
what
exactly
it
accurate.
was. Yeah.
Because he's just like, no.
All right.
As you do, you know. And like parents like me, so I have been victim to this kind of thing before.
What, the reluctant blowjob?
Did they have a clapper?
I stay away from anybody with the clap.
Yeah, it's a wise decision.
Oh,
Mikey.
good plan.
No, but like when your parents like someone, it is definitely like you. It's like definitely, I don't know, I don't want to say a turn on, but it's like you get more excited about the person.
And usually by the time that you're meeting parents, it's at a point where you need the parents to like you.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be around unless you ghost people.
Yeah, Mikey, I don't know that you know what we're talking about, but I've always noticed that the parents are more nervous to meet me than I am to meet the parents.
Yeah, oh, definitely. When my parents met my husband, they were like, did he like us or did he think we were too much? And I was like, first of all, you're always too much. That's why I love you. Secondly,
Don't change a thing.
I mean, I think my mom has only met like 2 people I've dated in my like adult life. One was only because she lived where my mom lived.
Oh, so what you're saying is she would not have met your mother if she wasn't geographically located close to her.
Yes.
Jake is the only person my parents met that I have dated since like high school, basically.
Yeah.
I pretty much bring anyone I date for like 2 or 3 dates, I'll bring them to Christmas. That's like
That's
my
a bad
go-to
plan.
move. Yeah. I was dating a girl. We had been dating a month, and I brought her to Christmas.
Oh, no.
And my mom, within 5 minutes, asked us if we were going to start having kids soon.
Was that her way of being like, never do this again?
No, my mom was serious.
Oh, no.
But anyway, so like it happens. Those mothers exist.
Yeah.
But so we cut to scenes of them each opening presents. First, we see Sloane open a pair of pajamas that are clearly 5 sizes too large.
Yeah, they're huge.
Like, I'm looking at them and she's holding them up. I'm like, those would be big on me. And like, I am much larger than her. That's crazy. And then we cut to Jackson at the crazy house.
Mikey,
where
me too.
he opens a pair of khakis, and then she basically expects a gift in return, and he's like, we've only been on 3 dates. I don't know you. You said that we weren't going to do gifts.
Paige,
Like,
he's
what are you
also
doing?
wearing one of the same sweaters. Like
Yes,
everyone
yes,
is now
yes, yes.
wearing the same sweater because apparently sweaters are sexually transmitted diseases. And he's currently wearing one. I thought that was hilarious. But then he is like, I thought we said we weren't doing gifts. And she says one of, I think, the funniest lines of the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure which one you're referring to. This whole scene is gold.
He's talking about, you can come in my mouth, but you're not going to give me a Christmas present.
Oh my God. It was so funny.
In front of her parents. And he's like,
my favorite is he's like, I've got cash. And she's like, what do you think I am?
a prostitute.
Like, her words.
Well, he offers her $40 and then she says $80.
$80? She's like bargaining, and he's like, I'm not giving you $80.
I'm not going to give you $80.
Oh my God. This scene, honestly, had I written this, I would have been high-fiving myself for a week afterwards.
So he basically is going to leave because he's not going to bargain with a woman who's willing to talk about where he ejaculated in front of her parents.
God, I thought that was so like
It was so good.
it was so over the line.
They did not seem upset, which is so crazy.
But Paige, they weren't upset. I think they were like, yeah, that's what we wanted them to do here.
I feel like if they're upset at all, they're like, in the mouth.
Yeah, exactly. That's not where babies come from.
You spilled the seed?
So he gets up to leave and he takes the khakis with him.
Yeah.
Well, first he takes the
Yeah.
sweater off and then he goes to leave and then he comes back for the khakis, just like, I'm taking these.
Yeah.
And leaves. We cut back to Sloane's family's Christmas, where her younger brother gets everyone's attention and proposes to a girl that he's been dating for 3 months and 6 days.
Yeah.
This will be how I
It's-
do it. If I meet somebody who lasted more than 3 months at this point, I'm probably just going to get married.
Oh,
Mikey, 3 months is not long enough.
yeah, it's not. It's fully not. Although I'll say this, my ex-stepsister, and yes, I realize it's a very strange way to start off a sentence, got engaged after knowing someone, I
Yes.
think, 10 days, and they're still happily married.
Wow.
10 days?
Yeah.
I mean, Paige brought her guy home the first day.
It just logistically worked out. But
Paige downplays the fact that her life is a romantic comedy.
well, I do think I knew fairly soon, but not 3 months and 6 days. That's
Yeah.
not long enough. Well, and I think the movie tells us it's not long enough through the rest of the movie, where they don't seem to know each other very well.
Oh, they fully don't. I think they go to therapy, though, right? Like, they try to
Right,
figure it
they
out
do.
later on. Like, but,
Yeah.
I mean, they fully do not. Although I do think they handle their quirks and issues responsibly. I don't see any problem
Yeah,
with how
yeah,
they
yeah.
sort of handle their issues, but they do have issues because they got engaged way too soon.
Yeah. I feel like they end up having to like have a relationship ass backwards, where it's like they're already married and they're having to meet each other essentially.
Yeah.
Like the good old times. My favorite part was when they're like, you can't keep a secret. She's like, how do you know?
I will say you have a choice in that situation. Like, if you find yourself married too early, you can choose to make it work and go to therapy and figure your shit out together, or you could not get married. I mean, like, it's, you know.
Yeah.
So we cut to the next day where he's trying to return the khakis at the mall, and I felt for this sales girl so much.
Oh, yeah. Because you've worked in retail.
I worked in retail for like 15 years because I started at 16 at Pottery Barn. And their whole thing is like, well, you don't have a receipt and I can't help you. And essentially Sloane is behind him in line. They're basically like heckling him from the line because he's clearly been up there forever.
Well, he doesn't want store credit, which is all they're offering him. He's like, I don't want to buy anything from the store. That's why I'm returning this stuff.
Right. I don't ever want to come back to this store. And she basically tries to jump him in the line because she's like, some of us have jobs.
Their meet cute is just her being super rude to everyone around her.
Yes.
Which I thought was very funny. Although I sort of like Sloane because she's just like, I have needs and I don't really care about other people's feelings on me per se. They're going to feel some sort of way about me, but I'm going to be true to myself. And I sort of like that about her.
I do. It is clearly a character trait that she has to a fault.
Yes.
I feel like it's good in a measure, but
Right.
like can go too far. But here, she basically tries to cut him in line to return the pajama pants, and she finds out that they're from last year.
I thought that was so funny.
They can only give her sales credit at the current sale price, which is a thing. Like, if you don't have a receipt, we have to give you like the last known price of that item.
Yeah.
And if it went on clearance, as this did, basically it's worth $4.99.
And I just love the way that Jackson was like, he like whispered it in her ear. It was so funny.
Well, and then Sloane's like, my sister is so cheap now that she's got 4 kids or whatever.
Yes.
Which 4 kids are expensive. I sort of get that, you know?
Yeah. And they kind of are like sharing their holiday stories as they're kind of bickering back and forth. And this is where we find out that she walked in on Aunt Susan
Yeah.
getting her cookie licked by the mall Santa.
Yeah, which we're about to run into him in a second, but not before this Princess Leia lady behind them offers them like $40 for...
To buy their gifts.
So
Yes.
weird.
I don't know
Yes.
why.
Yeah.
It's super weird. And she offers them $45 and pretzel coupons.
That's what it was. Yeah.
And reveals that she has a Matt Lauer tattoo.
We
That was
learned
so
so much
funny.
about this Princess Leia sort of character. I'm only saying that because her hair.
Yeah, she's got the buns. She's got the buns.
I really wanted the joke to be made of like, well, that tattoo didn't age well, huh?
Oh, I
Yeah.
love that. Yeah.
Oof. But they make a deal for $45 in cash and the pretzel coupons. And then they go out into the mall and have a pretzel together.
They have like a pretzel date.
Yeah, it's a pretzel date.
Well, he refused to eat the pretzel because he doesn't eat unhealthy.
Right.
Right. So she got a pretzel out of the deal. He got, I assume, $45 for those khakis. So they're walking out into the mall where they run into the mall Santa, who basically is like, tell your Aunt Susan to call me.
Yeah.
And she then has to explain to Jackson the concept of a Holidate.
Yeah.
Of like, yeah, it's a date that you only have for the holidays, no strings attached. It's just so you're not alone. And he basically says, oh, I should do that. And she says, one of my favorite lines in the movie, she's like, oh, I think that mall Santa's probably already booked for
Yeah.
New Year's. Basically be like, I don't think he can be your holiday. But she basically goes on to talk about how she feels like there's too much pressure in the holidays as a single person. And he basically says the thesis statement of this movie, where he basically says human beings aren't meant to be alone on the holidays. Drunk mocking strangers is like, basically like, you have to have someone with you
Yeah.
to be your teammate to witness the craziness.
Yeah.
So he basically is like, let's do this. Let's be each other's dates for New Year's. And she's like, no. And this is where they kind of lost me on him, because he says to her, and we get an explanation for it later.
Yeah. Oh, this is when he says, like, you're not really my type. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't find you attractive. And I was like, fuck this guy.
As a guy, I really connected with this whole subplot
Really?
because it's like he wanted her to know that I'm not doing this to try to sleep with you. But the way he tries to convey that is offensive, and then
Yes.
it just comes back over and over again. Well, because like I have been the same way, where it's basically like, I'm not trying to sleep with you. I don't even find you attractive.
Yeah, but it ends up feeling hurtful. And so it's not until much later in the movie that we find out that was not genuine. Through, I would say, an hour or more of this movie, we think he's not attracted to her.
Right. An hour, which is also like 6 or 7 months in the film time.
Yes, yeah.
And I have been victim of maybe saying something in a moment and then someone holding on to that for 6 or 7 months.
Yeah. That's not at all a surprise, Mikey.
As a guy, I'm fully aware that every girl I talk to who's single thinks I'm trying to sleep with them, or like there is
Yes.
that layer of conversation. So you have to like, it's sort of like when we were talking about on this podcast before, like, oh, my husband or my boyfriend or my girlfriend, like people
Yeah.
bring that up in conversation
You
fast.
drop it early. You wear your wedding ring.
As a single guy, you're like, look, I'm not trying to sleep with you. Like that is a thing that has
Right.
to come out sometimes. Like, look,
Yeah,
I just want
yeah.
a real drink, or do you want to just go for a hike? And I mean, I just want to go fucking hiking.
On the flip side, as a lady who used to be single, I have had dudes be like, I'm totally not trying to. And then you get to wherever you're going and they're like, spoiler alert, I am trying to. And you're just like, fucking damn it.
Now I'm stuck on a hike with a horrible person who's only got me out here to sleep with them.
This is a nice lookout point. Let's make it makeout point. Know what I'm saying?
So he tells her that he has tickets to, they call it the Skyfall party, which I think is like some sort of high-rise party. They exchange info. We find out that he's a golf pro.
And she like fully makes fun of him for it.
Yes, he like hands her his card and was like, text me. And she's like, I'm not going to text you. Golf pro? I mean, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, well, especially because I'm like, this is the most romantic comedy job
Yes.
that we have ever seen.
Yeah.
It's right up there with Architect.
Right. If she was a writer, we would be right on point.
Yes. If she was a writer, her job is a lot like my job, which made this like even more like we see her working at some point later in this movie, and she says a thing that I know I have said. Like it was nuts. So she says she's not going to text him. The very, very next scene, she's at home working. And she's on the phone with somebody. She's got spreadsheets up, and she's basically like, yes, like Q3 projections are, and she's basically going through her goal setting for the next quarter.
Yeah.
And her mom FaceTimes her So she has to like end the work call because her mom continually calls her, and her mom like ambushes her on this FaceTime call with like, meet my new neighbor Farouk, he's single.
He's a doctor.
And then she's like, I promise she looks better with makeup. And she's like, I have makeup on, but also screw you, mom. Like, this is insane.
This is why you stop talking to people. Yeah.
We then cut to, I believe it's the golf club where he works as a golf pro.
It's gotta be, right?
And I think his friend, Black Panther, who I don't know if we get his name. We must at some point, right?
The guy who wears the Black Panther costume?
I think he works in the clubhouse. I think that's how they know each other.
Oh, I thought he was like a client or something like that.
I thought so too, a client or like a coach. But then at the very end, we see him behind the counter at the clubhouse.
Oh, yeah. So he must work there then.
So he is swiping through Jackson's Tinder, pretending to be him, which is my favorite.
We've all done that.
I mean, I've done that with Mikey's phone.
Yeah. But he finds a girl on there and finds out that he actually has already hooked up with her. And his reasoning for using Jackson's account is that he has an obsessive ex that he needs to like dodge. And this is where Jackson brings up again the idea of a holidate, where in his mind, he's like, I don't need a girl. I just need coverage on the holidays. And right as he's saying it, Sloane calls him. And I think it's just to avoid having to confront Farouk again.
I thought she called him because he told her to text him. And she said, I'm not going to text you. And she wanted to not text him.
Oh, see, I thought she wasn't going to contact him at all.
I thought she wasn't going to contact him at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think the Farouk phone call pushed her.
Yeah,
Yes.
you're probably right. Yeah, that makes sense.
As he's like walking through this phone call, his friend is like, Holidate, is that a new app? I can't keep up with the apps.
Which I thought was really funny.
Very funny. We cut to the party where they are people watching, and he compliments her appearance pretty frankly.
I was about to say, I mean, he does that, but he says, your tits look exceptional in that dress.
Yeah, which they do. That dress looks like it was made for her.
Well, then she says, that's why I got this dress.
Yeah.
Same. Have done it. We'll do it again. Like,
And as a man, would recommend.
sometimes you just find a dress that is made for your body and you just do it.
Yeah.
I like Jackson because he's like, I love this. I can just say whatever I want and not have to worry about,
You thinking I'm classy.
right.
That is what he says. They then run into her Aunt Susan
Yes.
at this party. Aunt Susan shows up everywhere, and I love it.
She is making the rounds with her holidates.
Well, she's got a new holiday that she met nude figure modeling for his sculpting class. And they're all over each other. It's crazy.
And she's talking about how he sculpted her vagina.
He sculpted the clitoris so beautifully.
Yeah, and then she's like, Sloane, you've got to see it. And Sloane's like, I don't want to see that. And then Jackson's like, I want to see that.
Yeah.
I thought it was so funny.
We cut to them kind of sitting in a booth, drinking champagne, talking about how they hate rom-coms. And one of their big beefs is that, like, people are always, quote unquote, taking a break from dating, even though it's some impossibly good-looking person that's perfect for them.
Yeah.
And this is the first introduction of what I'll call the Ryan Gosling train, where it comes up again later. But she basically argues, she's like, I'm sad and single, but if Ryan Gosling showed up, I'm here for it.
Yeah.
Like, gonna do it. Nothing would stop it.
I completely agree with her in this moment.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I've heard people say, I am single, but I'm not Ryan Reynolds single. Like, if Ryan Reynolds came after me, that's happening, right?
Right.
I'm pretty sure I've said that.
So he then kind of pushes a little bit further and asks, who ruined romantic comedies for you?
Ooh.
And this is where we get the story about Luke, her previous boyfriend, who was handsome, smart, and French. And she says they wanted different things, and she wanted somebody to bring home for the holidays, and he wanted to text photos of his genitals to a barista.
I thought this was so fun. Well, then Jackson was always like, yeah, I would be on the Ryan Gosling train if he came in for me too. Yeah.
And she does say that she thinks Luke was too hot to be trustworthy.
I have sadly never been accused of that.
Me neither, but I have definitely said those words.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
When I was single and very angry, I definitely said someone was too hot to be trustworthy.
Okay.
Well, that's how I survive horror movies, because I would be like, oh, this beautiful woman is flirting with me. Like, she obviously wants something, and I don't trust her at all.
She obviously wants my blood for a sacrifice.
I want to keep both of my kidneys.
She must think I'm a virgin.
She goes to the bathroom where she runs into a girl that they saw while people watching, and the girl thinks she's getting engaged that night and has, I think it's wine on her dress, and she basically says, all my life I wanted to be proposed to on New Year's Eve, which not a great time. You got to share it with everybody.
Yes.
Sloane trades dresses with her,
Yes.
even though her dress, and by the way, that dress looks amazing on the other girl too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That dress looks great on everyone. It's a magic dress. It's the sisterhood of the magic dress.
This movie's going to spawn so many spinoffs.
She comes back to the table in the stained dress.
Yeah.
Which just shows you she's like a decent person.
Yeah, I think it does show you she's a nice, caring person, because that
Yeah.
literally is no one that she's connected to. It's just some stranger in the bathroom, that she gave her dress to.
Well, and I think it also shows that she rolls with the punches, where she's like,
Yeah.
I don't need to be perfect. I'm going to have a good time anyway, because she comes back to the party and we get like a mini montage of them drinking and dancing. At one point, she knocks a candle over on the table and it catches on fire. And then she pours champagne on the fire to put it out. And I'm like, that would make a bigger fire.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
That has alcohol in it. Alcohol is flammable, you insane person.
Champagne does, in fact, put a fire out.
How do you know that?
I've lived some life, okay? Hard liquor is what you don't want to like pour on a fire.
It's too high a proof is what you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, that makes
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 sense,
sense. The science is on your side, but I'm not going to test it out.
Right. So one thing I hate about this is her and Jackson are having a conversation in this club, and they're talking like they're at like a pub somewhere. Like you
Yeah.
would fully have to be yelling at the other person for
What?
them to hear you. And that's
You're
why I hate.
What?
Should we go? Like, that's why I hate parties like that, because you can't
Yes.
have these kind of conversations there. All you can do is drink and dance, which is fine, but it's not fun for hours and hours and hours and hours.
Maybe it was like a classy club because it had multiple levels. There was like a dance floor level and then an upper level.
It did, and they do seem to move around it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
even still, those parties are deafening.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I
loud.
hate that I can't talk to people because my strengths are more of the personality.
Same.
Yeah, same.
Personality is where I shine on a date. So the Dirty Dancing song plays, which is I've had the time of my life.
Oh, I love this.
They decide that they're gonna do the jump, and I'm like,
Yeah.
are they gonna make it? She's not running fast enough.
So funny.
They do it. Her dress rips. She ends up topless briefly.
Yeah.
And he drops her.
They end up with ice packs. They're kind of like sitting there nursing their wounds. He goes to the bathroom. The countdown happens, and she's still alone watching everyone.
Yeah.
She watches the engagement happen. He comes back, but he missed the countdown. He gives her a kiss on the cheek, which basically this early on, movie is basically saying like, this is convenient, but it is ultimately going to be unfulfilling. Like
Right,
it's
right.
already telling us.
I sort of like that, though, because this is technically their first date.
Yeah.
And if they did kiss at the end of their first date, it might and probably would sort of roll into just dating, right? And then that breaks the premise of the title of the movie.
Yes, this movie keeps them apart for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a
Yeah.
long time. I think it's to the movie's credit.
Yeah.
Because they end up getting to know each other better. We get more of a view of how they interact without that dating component. And then once it finally happens, you're rooting for them so hard.
Yeah.
Like you want it.
It does a really good job of showing like what happens when two people like let their walls down like gradually without knowing it, because they're pretty
Yeah.
real by like their fifth holiday.
Yeah. So they're in the car on the ride back. Basically, their consensus is that tonight didn't suck. Had a pretty decent time. And he says, what are you doing for Valentine's Day? And she's like, that's too far away.
Yeah.
And even if I don't have a date, I'm just going to buy a bunch of candy. And I'm like, You do you, girl.
Yeah.
Do it.
Been there.
Do it. Flash forward to Valentine's Day.
I love how it just jumps like these large sections of their life because they're not important.
Yeah. So she doesn't have a date for Valentine's Day, but she's describing what she's going to do, which is basically buy a bunch of candy, get drunk, and maybe watch some porn. And I'm like, sounds like a great Valentine's Day. Like, I have no flaws in your plan.
Yeah.
It's really great.
You, my single friend, are in for a good night.
Yeah, good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you. And she's telling her sister this. Her sister is like, maybe you should call Farouk, the like neighbor. And she's like, I'm not doing that. And then her sister's like, well, what about the mall guy that you went for New Year's? And she says, he wasn't even attracted to me. I'm happy being single.
Yeah.
And this is where they bring up, and this is kind of like the ticking time bomb of this movie, where her brother's fiance is like, you can't be alone at the wedding. Like, you need a date for the wedding, which is Labor Day, we find out.
Which she doesn't.
No, she doesn't. She fully could have enjoyed that wedding alone.
Oh, this is the scene where they're like, it's like her and her brother's fiance and like her friend, and they're like in this like Hallmark scrapbooking section of the store. Like, I don't know that section exists, but that's what it looks like.
Yeah. Well, and this is also where they tell her, they're like, you're already letting yourself go, which is
insane.
Crazy.
Because she's wearing a hoodie in public. That is insane to me.
And this prompts them to, behind her back, call. They're picking out invitations is what it is.
Oh, that makes sense.
They're picking out wedding invitations.
Doing. Yeah, that does make sense.
Yeah, I get why you got scrapbook from that, but they're picking out wedding invitations.
Yeah. That makes complete sense. Sorry. I've done that once. It went badly long term.
There's way easier ways to do it if you ever want to do it again.
I might need that in the future.
So her sister, as like she walks away to the candy store, her sister basically just says, call Rodney, who's the clown.
Yeah.
Basically to like, we're going to set her up. It's fine. So she goes to the candy store where she immediately runs into her ex, Luke, and his new girlfriend.
Oh, yeah.
The barista.
The barista.
And they are both gorgeous.
They are. I do have a bit of a problem with this girlfriend, namely because the movie talks about her as if she's like this young teenager almost.
Oh, I thought she was the same age as her.
She
as
looks
Sloane.
the same age as Sloane. And that's the problem, because I'm like, she's the same age as her and they don't look that different. And it's not until the very end, later when we run into them again and she's like, he impregnated a teenager. I'm like, is she supposed to be younger? Because she does not look younger than Emma Roberts. They look the same age.
Yeah.
And I would say pretty much the same level of attractiveness. Like, they do not look that different.
The only difference is they're way dressing Emma Roberts down and they're not dressing this other woman who I don't know her name down, right?
Yeah. We find out her name is Felicity, and she's brutal because she's just like, isn't he good in bed? Oh my God. Just like
the stamina.
Brutal.
Yeah.
And thankfully, Jackson walks by because apparently he spends every day at the mall.
That's my favorite part of this whole movie is that he is always at the mall.
It sort of concerned me a little bit that a grown-ass man trolls the mall. That does not seem like a healthy thing for a man to do.
It concerns me from a screenwriting perspective because I feel like there's a lot of places in this movie where he just conveniently shows up.
Yeah.
Or they conveniently run into people. And that, I think, is a bit of a failing on the part of this movie, is that there's not always causality for people to be where they are.
I think the movie only shows you Jackson's perspective when he's not stalking her.
Yeah.
So, like, he is stalking her, and then he just shows up and is like, oh, look, we ran into each other
He
again.
is definitely not stalking her. I think he, like, goes to the movie at the mall, which is something people do by themselves sometimes. And then he walks around and he gets, like, the glazed nuts or whatever, and, like, you know, maybe looks around the stores. I don't understand why there's such a judgmental perspective coming from y'all.
Why are you getting your nuts glazed at the mall?
Yeah, Mikey, we were just talking about how it's not a sexual thing, and then you said glazed nuts.
Anyway, he walks past the store, he sees what's going on, puts two and two together, and he pops in and saves the day by pretending to be her new boyfriend. and they immediately leave the store. This was why I wasn't fully on board with him. The way he talks about Felicity really bugged me.
Oh, about how hot she is all the time?
Yes.
I did. Okay,
Yes.
I did love that he comes in there to save her, and as they're like talking or whatever, he is completely disinterested in everything she says. And then when they leave, he goes, "Bye, Felicia," and like they walk out.
Yes.
And she's like, "Oh, it's Felicity." And he's like, Whatever." Like, I think that he handled it very, very well.
Yeah.
But when they
Right.
get out and start talking as they're walking down like the mall hallway or the mallway, as you will,
Right.
that's when he like starts being like, "Wow, she was super hot. Can you believe how
Yeah.
hot she is?"
And I'm like, this is not what Emma Roberts needs to hear right now. Right now, she needs to hear about how Felicity is a trash pile. Like, that's what she needs.
Yeah, but I felt like he was doing it to like pick on her.
I don't know. I mean, if that was the intent, it was not telegraphed well. What I did notice, so I'm watching it and she's still got the basket of candy, and I was like, did she pay for that?
No, she walks. She
And she
steals
stole the
candy.
candy.
Yeah, I did love this exchange that we get here because he's like, you owe me, and she does, "I do owe you," and he goes, "I'll take my hand job in the parking lot." And then it cuts to them in the parking lot, and it fully looks like she's giving a hand job.
But instead, they're just eating all the candy.
Yeah, it is so funny. Oh my God. Because I literally wrote in my notes, I was like, "Oh, that's funny. He talked about getting a hand job in the parking lot as a joke." And then I wrote, "Holy shit, they're doing it." But he is like making the sounds like, "Oh my God," because he never eats candy because he knows that abs are made in the kitchen. And so he only eats healthy stuff.
Yeah. Now she offers him a cigarette and he's like, "You smoke?" And she's like, "No. Sometimes a little tobacco never killed anybody." And he's like, "No, it did though."
It has. Like a lot of people. Yeah. A lot of people would say otherwise. Yeah.
But then he critiques what she's wearing also, which I don't like. This is also where she says, "This isn't my worst Valentine's Day." And he says, "Why didn't you just call me?" Which I think is a thing that we see with Sloane a lot in this movie is that she doesn't reach out. And I think part of that is because she's afraid of what people will say, which I think comes up later.
Well, and I think people reinforce that in her life because a lot of her interactions are negative about the way she dresses or the fact that she smokes or she's single or whatever.
And I also think she was really serious in her last relationship and she got cheated on, and I mean, it takes people a long time to heal from stuff.
Yeah, that's why you shouldn't cheat on people.
Speaking as someone who has been in Sloane's situation, I completely understand.
Yeah.
You sort of just want to isolate. Although she does sort of isolate, with the exception of going on a holiday every holiday. She does sort of isolate for a year, and I feel like that's a long time, although some people grieve at different rates. So I'm not judging her, but man, that's a long time to not put yourself back out there. But I mean, I completely understand a few months of like just trying to get over it and just figure out your shit and move on. It takes a while.
I'll be honest. It's taken me way longer to feel better than I thought it would.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm hoping the pandemic had a part to play in that.
I think it did.
I'm feeling a lot better now, but I mean, it took me like 9-10 months.
Yeah, it took me fully 6 or 7 months before I even started like trying to date. And you know that that's horrible. So like that wasn't fun either. But
well, what they basically plan on in this scene is that they set a plan for Easter and St. Patty's Day and the stuff in between. Basically, they're going to have holidates until further notice. So every holiday, they're going to go out together.
They legit set the rules. It's holidates until further notice, no sex is more or less their rules.
Non-sexual holidates. So the first,
I like how he was like, but can they though?
So the first holiday we see is St. Patrick's Day.
Yes.
Her brother is there, and this is where we find out that Jackson is her brother's golf coach.
Yeah, they're like sort of friends.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so basically almost like the whole family's there. They're still trying to set Sloane up with people, including a person named Leroy, who is a bouncer who we never meet. We just hear about.
I was a little disappointed we didn't see Rodney in like the background by himself at the wedding. I thought that would have been funny. Just some dude fully dressed as a clown. Just like a sad clown with a tear. Like I really wanted Rodney to be Chekhov's Rodney because I wanted that to pay off so bad.
That would have been so
He wouldn't
funny.
even have to say anything. Just like a guy in the back holding a balloon with a tear.
Well, and this is where, so her brother's fiance is like, "Did you guys all know that he golfed?" And they're like, yeah.
How could you have a golf coach and your fiance not know that you even golf?
I know. That's because they don't
insane.
know each other and they shouldn't be getting married. We cut to Easter where she's like forcing him to eat Peeps, and he's like, hey, those are like, they've done experiments where they like don't decay, and she's like, oh great, they're anti-aging. So she eats more of them.
Yeah. I love that Kristen Chenoweth fully shows up with Jesus in this scene.
As a Playboy bunny. She shows up as a Playboy bunny with her date Jesus.
Yes.
And then Jackson was like, oh, I love what you did there.
Oh my gosh.
And I feel like that was the writer telling herself that she did a good job with this scene. And honestly, completely agree.
Sometimes you got to take a victory lap.
Yeah.
Yes.
So her mom in this scene invited Farouk. This is the first time we actually meet Farouk apart from that phone call.
Right.
And her mom is super pushy about it. And basically, Sloane is like, I already have a date here. Like, what did you expect me to do here? I told you I was bringing somebody. And her mom is like, yeah, it's your holiday. I don't care. I want you to meet him for it to be a real thing. And I was fully ready to hate Farouk and be on Team Jackson and like, fuck this. But Farouk is so nice.
Yes. Okay. I was going to say that because I wanted, like, you assume that Farouk's going to be like a bad dude. And I really like that there is no bad dude in this movie. And although I will say it's a little ridiculous that Farouk fully hops into frame wearing a full bunny suit complete with huge head. But Farouk is just super nice. He's super nice and genuine. And Kristen Chenoweth leans over and goes, I love a man in fur. And I was like, I love Kristen Chenoweth so much. She's amazing.
This was a real tough point in the movie for me because I was just like, Farouk is so nice and so cool and is playing this so nice and so chill. Like, he's not putting any pressure on her. It is all her mom. He is taking it in stride. And I really wanted him to end up happy. And I was, at this point in the movie, I was just like, oh man, if he gets hurt, I'm going to be really upset.
I know. I know, but it works out so great. It's one of the reasons I love this movie so much. And another reason I love this movie so much is because shit like this happens in the background. Because when it focuses back on Jackson and Sloane talking at Easter, you see Farouk walk out of frame, and then you see Kristen Chenoweth fully bunny hop after him.
I didn't even see that.
It is so funny.
I didn't see that either.
It is so amazing. I was like, oh my God, this is my kind of movie.
I really love this movie.
I know, it's so good.
So her mom at this point gives her a lecture of like, I need you to meet somebody real, not this Holidate crap like your aunt. And this is where we cut over to Kristen Chenoweth all over her date. Sloane is like, well, she seems like she's having fun. Like, don't harsh her buzz, man.
But this is when the mom is like, you don't want to end up like her. She's going to die alone. And
it's her mom wanting her to be happy, but not understanding that happiness does not mean the same for every person. And there are people that could be very happy single. And yes, the holidays are a difficult time for that, but like, not everybody wants to be tied down. I get it.
Yeah.
That's right. You can't cage this free bird.
No, you could definitely cage your free bird a bit, I think, maybe.
Yeah. I've never seen a free bird want to be caged so badly, but then also fight against it, Mikey.
It's like a dog in a cone.
That's a good metaphor for my dating. I need to find me a holiday for this season. It is right now, November 1st.
Ladies, if you want a holiday Mikey, reach out at mrandolph24.
This is a bad plan. This is a bad plan.
Time for a Ransom the Pod giveaway.
It's my dick. It's free. Who wants it? Just kidding. It's $80.
Anyway, if you want to Venmo me, you can come to Thanksgiving. If
you Venmo me $80, you can buy your own flights to Tennessee and come to Thanksgiving.
This is going to end badly.
She talks to her niece and asks how things are going with the guy she was sharing juice boxes with. And she says he wasn't ready for a real relationship, so she moved on.
Yeah. This niece, she knows what's going on, man. She's like wise beyond her years.
Her niece leaves, and she and Jackson have like a pretty vulnerable conversation where he's like, the bunny doctor seems really nice. Maybe you should go for it. He's great with kids. He's a doctor. And she says, I'm not ready. And he says, it's been almost a year. And she's like, yeah, it was brutal. And this is where, because we never officially get his story of what happened.
We sort of get it right here.
I mean, we get it.
This is one of those like hypothetical stories that's like way
Yes.
too specific to not be his real life story. Yeah.
Yes. And because I have in my notes, women can be just as brutal. And then I just have, oh, this is a personal story.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I think they make that clear with the panini maker. That like, do you know how
Yes.
expensive a panini maker is?
$40.
Yeah.
Which it is 40. It's not that expensive.
Oh, really?
That's half a blowjob.
Yeah, it's half
Whoa,
a blowjob.
whoa, whoa.
If you just go to Target and work the tip, you can get a panini maker. So
That's why I go to Target just wearing red shirts.
and just pantsless like Winnie the Pooh. Just like red polo, no pants.
It's called a honeypot scheme.
Oh, wow.
But so yeah, she stole his panini maker, kind of like in So I Married an Axe Murderer, where she stole the cat. There's just a picture of her with the panini maker looking out the window.
But it wasn't just that. He was like in love with her. They lived together, and then like one night she snuck off and took all her stuff and like never talked to him again.
It's pretty brutal.
And then she was his nurse in the hospital.
Oh,
okay.
Mikey.
Oh man.
Your life is insane.
There was a time when I was younger, I was like, I want my life to be like a movie. I don't want that anymore.
No, I don't either.
Because that movie could be the lucky one. So we cut to their next holiday, which is Cinco de Mayo.
Yes.
And they're talking about their sex life because by now, this is like their 5th or 6th date. They've known each other for months. It's finally coming up. And he reveals that he slept with one of the cocktail waitresses from St. Patrick's Day, which I also didn't love. I didn't like it.
Although it's not breaking the rules they've set up.
It's not. No, not at all. And this is where she kind of throws the "you don't find me attractive" thing in his face the first time, I think.
Yeah.
Where she kind of really, it's almost an argument, and she kind of uses it against him and basically is trying, it's this like, they dance around it of her being like, no, I'm great at sex and you'll just never get to know. And he's like, well, okay. And then she's like, well, maybe find out. Well, maybe I won't find out. And then they take a bunch of shots. Which is
always a mistake. Like, there's no way this night is not going to end up exactly where it ends up.
What happens is she wakes up on the floor wearing his underwear.
Yeah.
But they don't see any condom wrappers or anything, and neither of them thinks it happened because they don't, quote unquote, have evidence.
You'd be able to know, right? I did love that she's asking him, like, do you have any evidence? And he like looks down and he's like, I mean, he looks a little tired, but he doesn't look satisfied.
There could very well be no evidence. It worried me a bit because alcohol negates consent.
Well, they were both obliterated, though, so they both couldn't consent.
Exactly, so it shouldn't have happened.
Well, and it probably didn't.
I don't know. I don't know. There's no way. And the movie doesn't give you either way. They agree that it didn't happen.
Right. That is their story.
That's what they're sticking to.
But it's awkward enough to be realistic.
Yes, it is.
The next one is Mother's Day, where they're actually at like brunch with her mom. which I was like, why do you need to bring him to this one?
This is my favorite one that they do.
This is the best one that they do. Because her mom is basically like, stop this Holidate nonsense. And
in front of him.
Yes.
In front of him. This is where I think we actually find out what happened to the mom.
Oh, do you?
I think so. Because this is where she says she doesn't need a friend. She needs a husband, someone who will be there through chemo because you have bad genes. Basically, like, you're going to get chemo.
Oh.
Okay.
So I think this is where I formed my headcanon theory that her dad died of cancer.
Okay.
That checks out.
That
Okay,
does
that makes
check
sense.
out. Yeah.
And that, like, has informed her mom's belief that, like, she needs a husband because someone needs to take care of you, you know?
Okay.
And I do really like, because she is really kind of going after her of like, you're never going to find somebody because of A, B, and C and the way you dress and whatever.
Yeah, she's being pretty awful.
Pretty awful. And he comes to her defense and is like, she's a great girl. Anyone would be lucky to be with her. At one point, her mom compares sex to escargot.
Yes, which was so funny.
It was very funny. And they do what I think is my favorite thing in the world to do if like someone's pestering you about having kids or whatever, where the mom basically is like, why don't you guys try sleeping together? And they're like, she has a point. I hear the bathrooms are nice here. We're going to go. Like, and they just leave. And I love it.
And listen, you need to find someone who will yes and your bits in public.
Yes.
That person is a keeper.
Yes.
And they fully support each other's bits no matter where they are in it. And I love that about them.
So the next one we get is 4th of July, where they're just lighting off fireworks with abandon.
I do love that they get York, her brother's fiance, to smoke pot.
Yes.
And she's like super high strung and then like immediately is this very chill about everything.
And eating everything. She's like, I guess drugs don't affect me. And she's like eating egg salad with her hands.
Yeah, she's like scooping out hummus or whatever that was and licking it off of her hand. I don't think it affects me or whatever. Yeah, that's hilarious.
I liked how all the guys were down at the beach, like shooting off the fireworks, and they're all on, like laying out on the deck. Like, why do guys do that?
Because of sex. Well, this is also where we meet Aunt Susan's new Holidate, who can't drive because of his glaucoma, and he's the one who has all the pot.
Yes, yeah.
So everyone's smoking pot, everyone's lighting fireworks. They're shooting fireworks at her brother, who is on like a canoe. Like on the water, which is really hilarious.
I used to get in like bottle rocket fights as a kid. Like I remember doing this sort of thing.
Very dangerous.
Yeah.
Not safe and sane, emitting showers of sparks. So this is where we get Kristen Chenoweth's speech about how fireworks remind men of sex, and that's why they like explosions. I don't know that that's true.
I don't know that it's not true.
Yeah.
Because I like explosions.
It ends up with them convincing her brother's fiance to say the word fuck, and she ends up screaming it.
Yes. And then we hear Jackson screaming it.
Right.
Yeah, I loved that.
Because Jackson just lost a finger. A whole finger.
Yeah, it blew off his middle finger.
She has to take him to the hospital, but she's a nervous driver. Like, she can't drive. It's terrible.
I love as they're looking for the finger, like someone finds it, like, oh, I found it. And then he looks up and goes, are you sure that's mine?
I was not sure because, like, it looks like he only blew off, like, half his finger, except they find, like, a whole finger.
Yeah.
They're like, he's in shock.
Yeah.
But she is a terrible driver.
She's a terrible driver. She does get him to smoke pot to calm down, and they get to the hospital and get like stoned AF.
Yeah, they hotboxed their like hospital room.
Yes, which everyone nearby would know. And the nurse comes in and she just says, I'm too tired to report you. And thus ensues the best set of finger puns I have ever. Where it's like, I know you from somewhere, but I can't put my finger
on it. Yeah, I love that stuff.
And we find out that there's a doctor there that can reattach his finger, but right now he's reattaching a toe, and he's like, shouldn't finger take precedence over toe? And the nurse just says, if only you'd been a jackass earlier in the day. Which is so good. The doctor comes in, and it's Farouk.
Yeah.
Like, he's the one who's going to reattach the finger.
And he's super nice.
Super chill.
And this is where Sloane starts to like, she's like touching him, and she's like,
yeah, she's super stoned. She gets too flirty, a little flirty. And I think we see Jackson get jealous here a little bit.
We do.
So as Farouk's leaving, he's like, we can maybe reattach it, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
And then they don't laugh.
Yeah, and he literally goes, oh, tough room, or something like that. Yeah, I love that.
They finally get him back to his apartment and get his prescriptions and everything. She's got the soup the deli's delivering soup, and she's called his mom and left a message.
Yeah.
He says, sorry I ruined your 4th of July. And this is where we get one of the rules of Holidate, which is leave no holiday behind. Basically, like, you're responsible for them. It's a date.
Yeah.
And he puts his hand on hers.
Yeah, there's some lingered touching.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And she doesn't want to leave, I don't think. But I think he is nervous about asking her to stay. It's this like thing of like, if they would just say it.
Right.
This is where it happens. But
get ready, because the rest of this movie is them having feelings for each other, but each one of them scared to tell the other thing.
Yeah, they have fully caught feelings at this point.
Fully caught feelings.
Yeah.
So she leaves. the next day he's at a golf lesson and he's like, but our hands touched. And then she and her sister are at what looks like a cult meeting. I don't know what they were doing, but they're in like folding chairs, almost like a church service. And then we get like a reverse angle on it. And there's just a podium at the top with a glowing triangle. And I'm like, where are they? What is happening? But they're talking through it and they're just like, I don't know. There was a vibe. Like, maybe, I don't know.
I love Jackson talking about it. He's like, that handhold was not platonic.
Yeah, and it's not platonic anymore. And her brother's wedding is on Labor Day, which is a holiday.
Yes.
And his friend fucks some shit up because he's like, well, you can't go if it's not platonic. And he's like, but it's technically a holiday. And see what she thinks about it. And they like double fault where like each one of them is trying to suss out the other one instead of just saying what they mean.
You learned a lot from Wimbledon. I'm really impressed with you.
Thank
right
you.
There. That was
Thank
nice.
you. Did I properly use double fault?
Yeah,
Yes,
I believe
you did.
You did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We got to stop and talk about how his whole livelihood as a golf pro was in jeopardy for losing a finger.
I know, and no one talked about it.
Right. That's the one part of this movie that drove me. Like, it would have been a long recovery. He may have not been able to work. Like, it would have fucked up his life. And I was like, we've kind of glanced that over.
I didn't even think about that. Yeah, but you're right. It would have.
Yeah.
But Sloane is fully making up problems that aren't there, like as to reasons why she can't tell him about her feelings, and he's doing the same. It's like their defense mechanism when they get too close to people, right?
Yeah, well, I feel like what each of them are saying in this scene is like, I really like them as a holiday, and I'm worried that if I rock the boat, I won't even have that.
Yeah.
Which I think is that's the thought of everyone who catches feelings in a situation where they don't think they should, or friends with benefits or whatever, where they're just like, I have what I have now. Am I willing to risk losing that if they don't feel the same?
Right.
And it's tough.
That is tough. I do like a good friends with benefits situation.
Why am I not surprised that is your stance on FWBs?
I think they are setting people up for being hurt because communication is not great within those relationships. Like, you can if you are like freakishly honest, but I think a lot of times, and that's why there's a lot of rom-coms about it, I think people do not feel free to communicate in the same way they would in a relationship in those types of situations, and someone always gets hurt.
I'm not going to say that they've all ended well, because none of them have.
Yeah, exactly.
Because the success ratio has been 0.
0. So we cut to, they're on a phone call.
Well, they FaceTime because he's calling to get advice about a wedding gift.
And they basically are like, okay, we'll say it at the same time. We'll bring dates. But she was going to say, we'll go together. And he says, bring dates.
Right.
But what they both really want is just to go together as a couple. And so she's like, oh, okay, other people. So she calls Farouk, or we don't see it, but we cut to the wedding.
Yeah, and they're there together.
She's there with Farouk, and he's there with Aunt Susan.
Which
love
is
that. So great. When I saw that that's who he brought, I was like, perfect. Because like, we know that he's not going to actually do anything with Aunt Susan. He has created a situation in which he has fulfilled the obligation of like, we're not together, but I brought another Holidate. So it's almost like this is not a rival.
He's playing 4D relationship chess.
That's what it is, Mikey. Yeah.
So we cut to, they're at different tables, which I don't know why they wouldn't have sat them together, but like they're at different tables. She's like trying to make it seem like she and Farouk are having a good time, and Farouk's kind of like, what are you doing?
Like she's very handsy with Farouk for no reason. And dude, Aunt Susan puts Jackson's finger in her mouth.
She's sucking on Jackson's finger.
Yeah, and then Sloane starts doing it to Farouk, and Farouk is like, what is happening?
But my favorite is when we cut over to Aunt Susan's table, and he's like, nothing. I don't feel any sensation in that finger at all. And she's like, chewing on it.
Yeah.
And stuff.
And Sloane thinks they're being sexy or whatever, so she starts chewing on Farouk's finger. It's ridiculous.
It's really funny.
He's like, what is happening?
We cut to them getting drinks at the bar, and she
Yeah.
basically is like, well, are you going to sleep with her? Because now she is clearly jealous.
She is.
Yeah, and he's like, well, are you going to sleep with Farouk? And he's like, well, he did save your finger. And he's like, well, he botched it. I can't feel anything.
Which was so funny.
Well, yeah, because, Christian Chenoweth was just chewing on his finger like she was eating corn on the cob, and he felt nothing.
I thought it was going to break off. I was so scared.
And this is where he basically is like, well, maybe we should rethink the whole Holidate thing.
Yeah, they Holidate break up in this scene.
They do, and they
Yeah.
get interrupted by the father-daughter dance.
Oof. Yeah.
I was dying laughing at this.
This is where I have in my notes, where's Sloane's father? This is the first time I'm thinking about it in the movie, but
Yeah.
I guess her brother's wife now and her father have their first father-daughter dance to I'll Make Love to You by Boys to Men. The implication being that they don't understand the song.
So here's why I don't like that.
Yeah.
She has been only speaking English this entire time, and it clearly doesn't have an accent at all. She knows what words are in that song.
I have a headcanon on this.
Okay.
Okay.
I wonder if there are scenes missing.
Okay.
Or if it was written out of a previous draft or something. I got the strong sense that her character was extremely religious.
How does that justify Boys to Men, I'll Make Love to You?
Hear me out. She doesn't swear. She doesn't do drugs.
Sure.
She's marrying someone very, very soon. She doesn't seem to, she very much reminded me of almost like a Quiverful. like a Duggar sister. Like that's who she kind of seems to be. And I wondered if she was so inexperienced that she misinterpreted the lyrics of the song.
I could see that.
Okay.
Now, granted, the first verse of that song is
Throw your clothes on the floor. I'm gonna take my clothes off too.
which is pretty damning.
I mean, maybe it's about a baptism, Paige. You don't know.
Maybe it is. We do in this scene also see that the DJ does not seem to speak English. So I wondered if maybe it was that.
Maybe they just didn't pick a father-daughter dance song and they were like, play whatever. And he turns on that song.
I know. I like it borders on racist a little bit.
That was why I had a little bit of a problem with it, right?
Yeah.
And that's probably why they kind of cut it down a bit.
Yeah, it's not very long, and
Well, and I think
Sloane-
they play it like it's a bad thing too, because Sloane and Jackson are like, okay, we have to go save them by breaking up that this is a father-daughter dance.
Yeah. But yeah, so they break them up, and Farouk and Aunt Susan end up dancing, and she's like grinding on her.
Grinding on him. She's grinding on
That's what I mean,
Farouk.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Farouk's grinding right back.
Oh, yeah.
In my notes, it just says, Aunt Susan is a wild card, and I love her.
Yes.
Because you cannot predict what she will do anywhere in this movie. She ends up twisting her ankle, maybe for real, maybe not.
You think she planned this?
He carries her away romantically, and they're
Oh,
like, we
man.
have business to attend to. And just like,
When she does fall to the floor, Farouk does run over and he goes, "Are you okay?" And she goes, "I am now."
I am now.
So I mean, you're right. I do think she planned this.
I do think so too. And
Oh my God.
essentially, her and Farouk pairing off undoes their Holidate breakup.
Yes, it does, because
Because now they're only each other's options.
I think Sloane even looks at Jackson and says, "Any plans for Halloween?"
Yes.
Already on it. Yeah.
Already on it. He puts her in a corset for a sexy costume, and her sister is going with her because it's the first adult party since they had kids, and her husband's not coming. And this is something we've kind of established a bunch of different times in the movie, that her husband stays home and cares for the kids and doesn't go with her to stuff.
Yeah.
Which I think if you have kids, it's a very easy pattern to fall into of feeling like a parent and no longer feeling like a couple.
Right, and he doesn't trust any babysitters.
He doesn't trust any babysitters. And I do feel like I wish there was a little bit more about them in this movie. I do think they resolve it okay at the very end in the like afterword of this movie. But I felt like that was a very real struggle. I feel like everyone in this movie is three-dimensional. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like their struggle is very interesting and very real. And we kind of only get a little bit of it. And we don't get a ton of resolution until the very, very end.
I do love that as she's putting her in, because it's the sister that's putting Sloane in the corset, and her two nieces are on the bed watching, she says some offhand comment about how she feels like a whore or something like that.
She's like, when did Halloween go from dressing in costumes to dressing like a whore?
That's what it is. And then the girls are like, what's a whore?
What's a whore?
And then the mom says, it's someone who plays with boys.
Oh,
Paid to play with
gets
boys.
paid to play with boys.
Yeah. And then they go,
I want to be a whore. Me too. And then the mom
my
has
God.
the best retort, which is, well, just remember that the house gets 50%.
Yes.
Which is like a very real notion about it.
I thought it was hilarious.
So have either of you worn a corset?
I have not.
No. I am a fan of them, though.
Yeah, they're great. If you lace them wrong, it can be very uncomfortable.
I think what happens in this scene is not because of the corset.
Me
I don't want to
neither.
corset blame. I think it's because of the laxatives,
Yes, because her
Yes,
sister's
so
giving
funny.
her antacids.
quote unquote, and acids.
We then cut to the party, and she's kind of clearly uncomfortable because here's the thing. If you don't wear corsets often, if you don't have practice wearing them, they're not immediately comfortable instantly.
Yeah.
You can get more comfortable wearing them. You can lace them differently to be more comfortable, but she's not comfortable. And we meet Jackson's friend who is dressed literally in like a Panther mascot costume.
Yes. He looks like he's a Panther high school mascot, like high school football team mascot. Yeah.
Yes. And he's like,
So
I'm the
funny.
Black Panther. This is my interpretation.
And I love that he does a Bobby Brown reference here and he goes, it's my prerogative.
It's
I
so
love that
good.
so much. I thought that was so funny.
So Sloane and her sister arrive. I guess Sloane is a pirate wench to go with Jackson's pirate costume.
Yes.
Her sister is in like lederhosen, like Swiss or like a German, lady. And the Black Panther immediately hits on her.
Oh, yeah. He's into it.
And he's like, hey. And she just says, no, nope, like nopes right out of there. And he puts his mascot head back on
Yeah.
and then just says Panther on the prowl and goes back into the party.
Yeah.
We cut to somewhere else in the same party, which we find out later that Liz is her brother's wife, that her brother and his wife are throwing this party, which seems like a huge club party, which is strange.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Oh, really? I thought it was a huge club party.
It was, but they mentioned that she says to Liz, hey, good job, this is a great party, which implies that Liz planned it.
Maybe they're club promoters. That's like their day job.
Maybe. We cut to Aunt Susan and Farouk, who are balls deep in each other.
Yes,
It's
but
so
Farouk,
crazy.
who is a doctor, went dressed as a
As a
doctor to
doctor.
Halloween. Come on.
And she's a sexy nurse, and they are all over each other.
They're getting it on.
Which is great, but what we get next is one of the funniest jokes in this movie that made me laugh for a good 10 minutes, where we see that Liz is dressed as Cleopatra, and she's like,
oh, yes.
I'm supposed to be Cleopatra. And then the brother comes up, and he's supposed to be Mark Antony, but he's dressed as musical celebrity Mark Anthony.
It is hilarious.
It's so funny.
By the way, someone should do that next Halloween. Just go as Cleopatra and Mark Anthony and see who gets it. Because I was dying.
It's
that
so
made me
funny.
laugh so hard. It's
Yeah.
such a great throwaway joke. So we cut to Luke, her ex, and his, I guess, girlfriend that we met earlier at Valentine's Day are
Yeah.
also at this party. And she's like, why'd you invite them? Which is really funny because it's like clearly like you knew why. He says, or I guess she says, I love the slut costume.
Yeah.
And then she says, oh, I like yours too, because we reveal that Felicity is like 14 months pregnant.
yeah.
Like,
She's extremely pregnant.
she's about to drop that baby on the dance floor.
She says my due date is in 2 days.
yeah.
And then she's like, this baby's not going to change our lives.
Oh, and her sister, like, just losing her mind laughing was so funny.
But this is where I have in my notes where I'm like, this is where she's like, he impregnated a teenager. She keeps calling Felicity young, but they
Yeah.
look the same age. But this upsets her so much that she wants to go home. So Jackson's going to take her home,
Yeah.
and because leave no Holidate behind,
Right.
which
Right.
leaves her sister at the party alone. And her sister has this look on her face like, I get to have fun at this party. Like, I don't have to worry about anybody. I'm just here to have fun.
Yeah, she has a little too much fun at that party.
A little too much fun. He has to literally carry her into the apartment because, like, she thinks it's the corset, but we find out later, literally in just a cutaway right now, because her sister goes to offer antacids to Aunt Susan, pulls out the bottle, and we reveal that they are laxatives.
Yeah.
As he's trying to pull her out of the corset, she's doing the math to reveal that Luke and Felicity had sex on Valentine's Day, and that's why she's due in like 2 days.
Yeah.
Because us November birthdays, that's how it be.
Yep.
So they make like a mad dash into the apartment because she realizes, I think, that she's going to shit herself.
Yeah.
They get out of the elevator. They make it into the apartment. She gets into the bathroom, closes the door. We just kind of hear her scream. And he's like, did you make
it?
And she just says, go away.
Yeah.
And then we cut to, he helps her wash off. And this is where I was like, this is what good relationships are made of. Don't date somebody until you've barfed in front of them or shit your pants in front of them. And at this point I was like, this is the real thing. This is the person who will be there when you have chemo because they were willing to shower diarrhea off your back. Like, he is a keeper at this point.
It concerns me that it got on your back, but that's an issue for a different day.
If your clothes are too tight, so I don't know how much babysitting you've done, but it's a pretty common thing for when babies poop for it to squirt out the top of the diaper, and you end it. So like I've had to bathe children because they got shit all the way up their back.
Oh wow, okay.
Super gross.
Yeah.
So she's all cleaned up. He brings her tea and he says, I brought you peppermint tea, and she says, I had peppermint tea. And he's like, well, it's crushed Altoids in boiling water, which I was like, it's probably not that bad.
I mean, honestly, he'll shower you off. He's like MacGyver in the kitchen. He's a keeper.
He's a keeper. And she says, I'll be an anecdote that you tell at parties now, the girl who shit her pants on Halloween. And he says, technically, we've all been shitting our pants since we were born.
Yeah, he tries to make her feel better about it.
He does a good job. Yeah.
He does a good job. And
then he says, I won't tell anyone, I promise.
Yes. And then he stays over and they kind of cuddle. The next morning they wake up and he leans in to kiss her and she's like, I hate it in movies where they kiss in the morning. I think it's gross. And then they kiss anyway.
Yeah, he pulls her hand away.
They have a very, very hot sex scene.
Yeah.
And I was just like crying. I was just like, they're finally together.
It was great. Until what happens.
Yeah. Because we cut to after they're laying there and he says, so I guess we should. And I think what he was going to finish it up with was make this official. Like, I think we should date.
I think so too. And
she, I think out of fear, says, you can go if you want. And he's like, do you want me to leave? And she says, well, if you want, don't feel obligated to stay.
Yeah.
And I was just like all caps in my notes, like, talk about your feelings. You love each other. So we hear a furious doorbell ringing out in the living room of the apartment. So she runs out into the living room wrapped in sheets I guess she gets a robe on by then. And her sister bursts in and is like, I kissed the Black Panther. I'm a horrible person. And she just feels terrible about it, which appropriate feelings, I would say. I understand. Right. And then Jackson walks in and the sister is like, oh, you guys just had sex. I should leave. And Jackson's like, no, I'm leaving so you guys can talk about the fact that you made out with somebody that wasn't your husband. And they kind of Mexican standoff. Jackson leaves. And as he leaves, she just calls after him, see you at Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so painful. And I'll say this, in between now and Thanksgiving, both of them had the opportunity to call each other.
And they didn't.
And that drives me insane.
Yeah.
People are terrible communicators.
No, I know, Mikey.
I think this next scene really kind of lays out what happened, why they don't call each other. So he is talking to his friend at the golf club and he's like, she practically shoved me out the door. And he's like, so did her sister ask about me though?
Which is terrible.
Oh, yeah. She's fully married with 4 kids. And this guy's trying to figure out what her deal is.
Yeah, and I do like that Jackson shuts it down. He's like, no, I'm not going to help. she's not asking about you. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
But he then says, she said, see you at Thanksgiving like it was nothing. And I was like, you need to talk to each other. Like, you need to talk to each other. And he basically says, I don't think I can Holidate anymore. He does resolve to go, but I think as like a figure out what this is or isn't, basically.
Right.
He goes with the intent of figuring shit out.
He's a way better patient person than I am. Because if I had made that decision, like, I need answers, there's no way I'm waiting 3 more weeks to.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
So we cut to Thanksgiving. Aunt Susan has a new Holidate named Wally, who is the father from Wonder Years.
Yes. I saw him and I was like, oh I know this guy.
He's on so many Hallmark movies. It's so great.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
He looks the same as he did in the 90s.
He does. So her mom is ruining the turkey and everything. Her mom is a bad cook, and I feel bad. It's not for everybody. I feel like we put undue pressure on people at Thanksgiving, and it's not everyone's strong suit, and it's okay to admit that.
Yeah.
So this is also where Sloane talks to Aunt Susan and is like, oh, you didn't invite Farouk. You seem so happy. And this is where we find out that Aunt Susan breaks up with people before they can break up with her.
Yes.
And it's a preemptive strike.
It's like a pre-ejection, just like in So I Married an Axe Murderer. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And this is where they ask, like, are you sure Jackson is coming? And she says yes. So they start putting the leaf in the table.
Yeah.
So, which is like a symbolic prop move of like, this is an official relationship now. We're going to do it, even though they're still technically holidating. Because her mom burned all the food, she has to go to the grocery store. As she's going to leave, Jackson's at the door and he brought a pie and her mom's like, we don't need it, but thanks. And I'm like, bitch, you need that pie. Just take that pie.
I wonder if the neighbors need it. But right after she burned everything.
And asked Sloane to see if they have a pie.
Yeah. She is terrible.
Yeah, her mom is pretty rough.
Yeah.
So Jackson agrees to drive to the store so they'll both go together. And I think this is also his way of like, we can be alone and talk away from your family.
Yeah, I think that's what they need, although it goes badly. But I do feel like they need to communicate.
Yeah, as they leave, we see Peter, the sister's husband, manually inflating like a Christmas inflatable on the yard.
Yeah, so funny.
So funny. They get to the grocery store and he basically launches in where he's like, are we just going to pretend it didn't happen? And she's like, well, you didn't want to have sex in the first place because you're not attracted to me. She brings it back to throw in his face.
Ugh.
And
you say one dumb thing one time.
Well, he explains that he just said that because he didn't want to come off like a creep.
Yes.
And it would have seemed sort of creepy if it was like, no, you're super gorgeous. I'm super into you.
Yeah. Well, and he's like, I was a random guy at the mall. How would you have reacted if I had told you, like, I love your eyes? And he like lists out all these things. And I'm like, oh my God, finally. Like,
I know.
So then she brings up the cocktail waitress, which I was like, fair point. Like, this is.
He wasn't breaking any rules, Paige.
He wasn't, but, you know.
They weren't dating.
I'm going to say, if he had feelings for her at that point, it's still kind of not great. Like, he didn't break a rule, but that doesn't mean it's not going to come up in this fight.
And they might have had sex the night he met that lady, right?
They might have.
Yeah.
Anyway. So he basically is like, thanks for the update. I'm not the asshole this time.
Yeah.
And he accuses her. He's like, you're trying so hard not to feel that you're lying to both of us. And I'm just like, ooh, like harsh truths from the back court.
Yeah.
Like, hardcore. And she then is like, well, you had to troll them all for a holiday. And he's like, you were desperate enough to take me up on it. And I was just like, roasted.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah. They fight really well. I really like them together fighting.
Oh, they do, yeah.
This is a real fight. And it is hard to watch, but also you're just like, finally, like, get this shit out in the open.
Yeah.
And then she, as he leaves, says, I see an ugly Christmas sweater in your future.
Oh.
And then he comes back and is like, hey, you know what? If Ryan Gosling did show up, you'd still say no because you're afraid to get hurt again. And I'm just like, oh my God. A, he's right, but also B, like, is he a therapist? Because, like, really, that's like...
He's a golf pro, but he's not her golf pro.
He's not her golf pro.
Right.
But then she says what I think is, it's too funny for the scene because realistically, if someone had this conversation, I'd be sobbing in the grocery store if this was me.
Oh,
and
yeah.
she instead is like, Ryan Gosling would never do his own shopping. He's way too cool for that, which is like...
Clearly, she's not focused on the right thing.
Yeah,
Right.
true
Yeah.
and very funny, but unrealistic for the emotional gravitas of the scene.
Yes.
She comes back to the house alone and everyone's like, where's Jackson? And she's like, he's gone. And they're like, thank God we can stop putting this leaf in. And then everyone kind of gangs up on her. And
they have an intervention.
yeah, they're like, your life is always a mess and it ruins the holidays, which is real harsh and not true.
Right. That's a little too much.
I think she does prove it true in this scene, but I think this is the first time it happened.
Yes.
They could have said, when you're not happy over the holidays, it kind of brings down the rest of the holidays.
Yeah, and that's not what they say. They're just like, you ruin everything because your life is a mess, is what they
Right.
say to her. And she counters back with, at least I didn't kiss the Black Panther in front of everybody.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
whew,
She went real Witherspoon on this one.
I know. And it's one of those things where I'm like,
She did the full Witherspoon.
do I think the husband deserves to know? Absolutely.
Yes.
Do I think that there is a more tactful way to bring that up? Absolutely. But also we find out in the scene that the brother York also saw it and didn't say anything.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And then his fiance gets mad.
And essentially this scene ends with everyone's life falling apart because this entire family does not actually communicate.
And one of them is literally not even a member of the family. He's an innocent bystander trying to put a leaf in a table, and he has a heart attack.
He has a heart attack. So Wally has a heart attack, and Aunt Susan has to go with him because
She doesn't want to.
She doesn't want to, but no Holidate left behind, and she drags Sloane with her.
Yes.
So we cut to the waiting room where Wally's in surgery or whatever. We're not sure. He's unknown.
He's in a room somewhere, yeah.
And Sloane and Aunt Susan are in the waiting room. And Aunt Susan's like, I had to write his name on my arm. He is nothing to me. But she basically says, I've had so many opportunities. And once I got too close, I backed off. And now it's too late for me.
Yeah.
But is it too late? Because it turns out that Farouk is Wally's doctor.
He's the only doctor
I
in
know.
town.
He literally is the only doctor in the area. I love that. And I love that he comes out and he's like, Wallace? Who's here with Wallace? Christian was like looking around like, I don't know. Is that us?
Is that us? That is us. We find out it was a mild heart attack and he's going to be fine.
Yeah.
But they reconnect and she basically is like, I fucked up. You're the most amazing man I've ever met. I love them together. I love that he takes her
And
back.
She's like, I'm scared.
I
was
love
scared.
that they end up together. I was just like, yes.
I literally wrote in my notes, this is the exact same conversation that Sloane and Jackson need to have in like 7 minutes.
Which is exactly what happens,
I know.
essentially. Yeah.
And then I wrote, I love Kristen Chenoweth because I love Kristen
Oh,
Chenoweth.
she's so funny in this movie.
So great.
We cut to Sloane is at home reading, and she finds a set of pictures that they took on Cinco de Mayo, which, by the way, they're kissing in one of those photos.
I know. I saw that. We don't see that in the movie, but we do see it in the photo. Yeah.
And I think they were too drunk and didn't realize it.
yeah. Which also leans to the fact that they probably had
They
sex
probably
that night.
did. They probably
Yeah.
did. Yeah.
I like how at one point in the movie the sister was like, because they're talking about when they were holding her hand or whatever.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, it just feels weird. It's just like a weird thing. She's like, is it weirder than not knowing if you had sex with him or not? And she's like, yeah.
Yeah. She goes to his apartment and he walks out. She basically happens to be there just as he's leaving and she doesn't talk to him. She kind of like
She
ducks.
hides.
She hides, yeah. They go to the mall to go Christmas shopping where the best mall choir on earth is there.
I love this mall choir.
I love that. I
They're
have sung in
amazing.
malls in choirs. We were never that good. This mall choir is amazing.
Yeah.
And Jackson, as always, is at the mall because that's all he does. It's a very weird personality trait for him to have, but he's at the mall.
Yeah.
She debates whether or not she's going to go after him. And her niece is like,
Oh, because they pass on the escalator. Like,
yeah.
she's going up the escalator, he's going down, and they see each other but don't say anything.
Yes.
And then the niece, like, talks some sense into her.
yeah, she's like, life is giving you a moment. I was like, that's very profound for a 6-year-old.
That's when I started crying.
I definitely start sobbing.
Yeah.
So
I was like, oh, shit, the 6-year-old knows what's up.
I cried through like the back 20 minutes of this movie.
yeah,
So-
off and on, for
Oh,
sure.
I teared up at this
So So she gets off the escalator at the top and then tries to go down the down escalator through the crowd of people. It's just like, I don't know if you guys have ever worked at a mall, but if you're like late coming back from lunch or something and you're just like, move, damn, I can't, oh, damn it. Felt this very hard.
I did love that it was like a realistic try to get through people because it wasn't like everyone just moved out of her way. Like she has to like move couples who are holding hands, like move their arms over her head. Like they're like, what the fuck is happening? I like that. It was good direction.
So she calls after him. He doesn't hear her. It's too loud. She gets up on Santa's chair. She's calling for him. He still doesn't hear her. The choir helps her out by basically the whole choir calls for him.
Sings in harmony his name. Jackson! I loved it.
So he turns, the choir hands her a microphone.
Yeah.
And then she, in a crowd full of children, is just like, I fucked up.
Literally what Aunt Susan just said. I loved it.
It was Todd and I at the Halloween party on Friday. I was like, yeah, that was real fun.
Oh, there were kids here. Yeah.
But she basically gives a longer, larger version of the speech that we just saw Aunt Susan give Farouk, but makes it a little bit more personal and ends it with like, you're the only one I want to go to chemo with. And I was just like, no, they're gonna die of cancer. So like,
I was fully sobbing when she said, I thought I wanted a Holidate, but I just want you.
Oh,
I was losing
sobbing.
It, man. Yeah.
And she's like, if it was any consolation, it really was the worst Thanksgiving of my life, which like, yeah, you spent it in a hospital. Like, everyone's quiet, and he just says, nah, and goes to walk away.
He walks away.
And then turns back around, and I was like, oh, thank God he's joking. I was about to, like, yeet my computer into the sun if that's how this movie ended. And he basically turns to her and says that speech was cockamamie, mocking her from what she said about romantic comedies in the beginning of the movie. And then we get like a slideshow kind of epilogue where we see them on a plane. They go to Sydney, ostensibly to meet his family and go to holidays with them.
Yeah, we get a montage of green screen photos.
Yes.
Yeah.
We see Farouk and Aunt Susan together.
Yeah.
I'm loving it. And then this is the one that I wish we had a little more time on because we see her sister and her husband Peter in Vegas renewing their wedding vows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where clearly they're like, we do need time away as a couple. And we didn't really get a ton of that in the movie, but I do like that we get it here. We see Liz and York getting matching tattoos, but also we see that Liz's tattoo is unfinished because it was too painful.
Yeah.
So it's just a heart that says, yo.
Yeah.
We see that her mom ends up with Wally, which was kind of telegraphed a little bit in Thanksgiving, where he seemed to get along better with her mom than Aunt Susan. And then we see that the Black Panther ends up with the crazy chick from the beginning with the sweaters.
Yes.
And that's the movie.
All right, so having seen it, having talked about it, what do you guys think? Final thoughts, hit me.
I really like this movie. I don't know why it got bad reviews. I like it so much.
This movie was so good. I got a text at 3 a.m. from Paige like, what, Holidate?
I know, same.
It's so good.
Yeah, it has no right to be as good as it is, but it's so good.
It's essentially a Hallmark movie that's as good as a theater movie.
Yeah,
it's like if the writing staff of Hallmark took a stab at like a Bridesmaids type holiday movie. And I mean that both as compliments. I feel like it's both the good sides of Hallmark movies and Bridesmaids.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because it's a little vulgar. It's, I think, realistically vulgar, if that makes sense.
I genuinely liked it. I feel like this is the level. If all Hallmark movies were this, I'd be watching every single one of them.
Oh, yeah.
They are not like
no, they're not. Usually someone is like Santa's ghost or like owns a Christmas tree farm but also has a whole mansion. Like it's not this, but if it was this, but this is the kind of Christmas movie I love. This is why I love Just Friends. This movie is a lot like Just Friends.
It is.
But oh man, yeah, I really liked this movie.
Well, awesome. Well, Paige, do you have some fun facts for us?
No. Sorry, there's
there aren't any. Yeah,
there aren't any.
I don't have box office either, just because it's a Netflix release, right? And there's just
Right.
not much to
Yeah.
it. As you were talking about this, Paige, we were talking about like the critical reception.
Yeah. How did this get such bad reviews? This is wild.
Yeah, it is not great. Like they did not get good reviews.
I don't understand.
This movie might not review well, but this is going to get good word of mouth, and this is going to be huge on Netflix this holiday season.
It's been it was number 1 all week.
Yeah, it's got a 43 right now on Rotten Tomatoes.
That is mind-boggling. I don't
Yeah.
understand. What do people want out of a romantic comedy if this is getting 43%?
So do you guys think they're still together?
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually
I
do.
think so too.
I
Yeah,
think so.
I think so too.
Now, do you think her brother and his wife are still together?
I think so. They
You think
Yeah,
so?
because they go to therapy.
Yeah, well, and they also went to Vegas to renew their vows.
No, the different ones.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, I think so too because they went to therapy. I think they're working it out. They're figuring it out.
I feel like it could be a toss-up on that one. I do think
Yeah.
her sister and her husband are still together and that they're working on shit.
Yes.
And I think the kiss was a wake-up call to be like, I do love my husband and I don't want to hurt him.
Right.
You know, I think that kind of catapults them into working on their stuff.
Agree.
Right.
I don't know about her brother and wife, the one that get married in this movie. That's the one that I'm like, I don't know about that one.
I'm sure they'll just accidentally get pregnant this Christmas.
Oh, there you go. Do you think Luke and Felicity are still together?
No.
I don't either.
Yeah,
I think he
absolutely
left.
not.
I think he left her pregnant ass.
Yeah, well, I mean, he didn't leave her pregnant because she gave birth 2 days after that
2
Halloween
days after,
party.
yeah.
But I mean, he left shortly after that baby was there.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, and probably well before we saw them at the Halloween party, he was already sending dick pics to another barista.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Luke's not a good guy.
Nope.
How could you hurt Emma Roberts like that?
How could you? She's great in this. I really liked her. in
She
this.
is. She's fantastic. All right. So, are their jobs realistic, Paige?
I think so because I mean
Yeah.
she has what I would call a regular looking apartment. We established that they're in the suburbs of Chicago, but not
Yeah.
Chicago proper. And I mean, he's a golf pro, which it's a fake job. I mean, like it's a real job, but it's like a romantic comedy job. She, it sounds like, does something similar to what I do, and if that's the case, yes, I could afford an apartment in the suburbs of Chicago. So yeah, I think they are realistic to me. It didn't ring not true.
Depending upon the size of the club he works at, he could make well into the 6 figures.
Yeah, exactly.
Golf pros make dumb money for some reason.
He never really throws around money either.
No, and you don't really ever see his place. He looks like he lives in like a high-rise condo place-ish,
Right.
Yeah.
which is nice. I'm sure it's more expensive, but I mean, he could totally afford a place like that.
He could, and he's not in the city proper.
Right.
It establishes that they both kind of live outside. I want to see more movies like this. This would, like, if most romantic comedies were this, I'd be a fan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So this week, Mikey made us watch Holidate, and thank you so much, Mikey, for making us watch
You're
it.
welcome.
Paige, what are you making us watch next week?
So this is dropping on my birthday.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah.
Happy birthday.
So I've talked about it a lot in this episode, and I think I told you guys last week that I was going to do this. I'm going to pick one of my favorite Christmas rom-coms of all time, which is Just Friends.
Awesome. I love Just Friends. It's so
I love
good
it as well.
Yeah,
Yes.
I can't wait to talk
Which,
about it.
similar to Holidate, but a harsher, more comedy-forward version of Holidate.
Agree.
And
Yeah.
I would argue Anna Faris's best performance.
Yeah. So your homework this week is to get wine drunk and watch Just Friends for next week's episode.
I'm going to say get eggnog drunk, eat some toothpaste, and then watch Just Friends.
Hell yeah.
And also, if you're stuck at your parents' house over this holiday season, get wine drunk by yourself and watch Holiday. It'll be on their Netflix
It'll
account.
make you
steal
feel
from them.
worse. No, seriously though, if you are typically a singleton on the holidays, I do really like Holidate because I feel like it's one of the first movies to be like, yeah, this sucks. And it's other people's fault, not yours.
Yeah,
and,
yes, absolutely.
And I really like it.
So, Mikey, do you have a review for us to read?
No.
Well, while you look up a review, let me tell them how they can have their review read on the podcast, and that is simple. It'll leave us a 5-star text review. So actually type something out for Mikey to have a little fun with while he reads, and he will read it on the podcast.
Okay. This one's from The Girl Who Must Not Be Named.
Oh, Okay.
You're doing a pod for 2... ... I can't see the full title. She says, because she says a girl who must not be named, so I know the pronouns. I would listen to these 3 hosts talk about anything. Not only are they hilarious, but they are such real, genuine people. The show is hilarious already. I can't wait to see what they do next. Todd, Mikey, and Paige, thank you for always caring about what you do and never forgetting to have fun.
That is a great review. Well, Valera DeMort, is that her name?
No, it's the girl who must not be named.
So, well, the girl who must not be named, thank you so much for that awesome 5-star review. And if you would like to have Mikey read your 5-star review, leave us a 5-star review. So, yeah, guys, if you like this power throuple that we have here on this podcast, make sure to check out our other podcast, The Horror Virgin. And that is the only other podcast that Mikey and I are on. But Paige gets around, and she is on 2 other podcasts, Black Card Rehab and Cult Podcast. So guys, definitely check out those because they're amazing. If you want to follow us on social, we are at Romancing the Pod Show.
Yes.
On Instagram, and we are at something else on Twitter who I just have never taken the time to learn
It's just Romancing Pod Show because they have a character limit and it's show SHO like Showtime.
So guys, check that out as well. And if you want to follow us all individually, Paige is at Rampage Wesley everywhere, including TikTok, except for Twitter, where she is at Paige Wesley. Mikey is at MRandolph24, and I am at Todd J. Awesome everywhere.
So that's going to be it for us this week, guys. I'm Paige Wesley.
I'm Mikey Randolph.
And I'm Todd Schlosser.
And you complete us
to completion. Laters, babies!